it works. And I'm just going to try to get rid of my my video, but maybe we'll just stop video.
Recording in
There we go, finally. Okay. I had the honor of attending the Tokyo Olympics last summer, and it's a little bit crazy to be saying that it's Tokyo 2020, but I guess all the signage was up, and they just decided to go with it is Tokyo 2020. We going to Tokyo, we were limited to the stadium. Well, we obviously arrived in the airport. We were taken right to the hotel. So the only two places we were allowed to go was the hotel and the stadium. We really lucked out in athletics, and all the officials were housed in a hotel that was right across the street from the stadium. We were able to walk to the stadium, which we were in control of our time then, not having to rely on transport that either does come or doesn't come or is late. These were the Olympic rings that were outside of the stadium, or just on the stadium grounds. So we were able to take a couple of pictures before the actual competition started. To get to Japan was a little bit of an ordeal. Before departing for Japan, we were sent a 70-page playbook to review, which was basically COVID protocols. We had to take 2 COVID tests at a Japanese accredited lab. And in Winnipeg, where I live, there was only one lab that I could go to. And each test was $450. So it was, as I say, quite an ordeal to try to get there. We had to download 2 apps on a mobile phone. One was sort of a tracking device that was tracking where you were in Japan. And the other one was a health app that we were downloading our tests on every day, as well as a COVID screening questionnaire. My phone was too old to support the app. So before I went to Japan, I had to buy a new cell phone, but I guess I was due for one anyways. When we arrived in Japan, the COVID, we had to take a COVID test result upon arrival, and we couldn't leave the airport until the test result was received. I was fortunate. Some people, it took 9 hours plus. For me, I think upon landing and then departing the airport, it was only 2 hours. So I lucked out. We were told only to use Games Transport. So they were special cars or buses. As I mentioned before, we were restricted to the venue and the hotel. We wore masks 24/7, indoors and or outdoors. The only time I ever took my mask off was when I was in my room by myself. We took part in daily COVID tests and health reports. We were given a little package of test tubes and with barcodes that each day we had to do a saliva test, and we deposited it before we went into the stadium. There were temperature checks too that we had to report daily. But before you went into any room or before you went into any building, there were these temperature check places that it was easy to get your temperature because people were taking them everywhere. There was also hand sanitizing everywhere. Before we entered the stadium, there was a multitude of volunteers who would stop you for a temperature check, as well as make sure that you sanitized your hands. In the restaurant, where we ate breakfast. We had to wear plastic gloves. There were plastic dividers at the tables. It was a buffet style, so to serve yourself coffee or food, you had to wear the plastic gloves. You got to take them off when you were seated at your table, but if you needed another cup of coffee, you had to don the gloves again and go up and get a second cup of coffee. It was kind of interesting. When we arrived at the stadium, we were given a sanitary kit, which was this bag that included masks for the duration that you were there, those test tubes that I talked about, the barcodes. I think there was hand sanitizer in there, but it was kind of cute getting a sanitary kit.
Jane,
Oh, yes.
how come you didn't have your mask on when you were getting your picture taken beside the Olympic rings?
Good question, John. I told you I never took it off. For 30 seconds while I had my picture taken, since we were outdoors, and I mean, the closest person to me was 4 or 5 meters away, I did take it off for a minute, John. I admit. The stadium COVID protocols I mentioned, but before we could enter, they did temperature checks, hand sanitizing, and that was before security. Then when we went through security, you had to show your ID. They double checked it, and then the usual metal detection, whatever. There was mask use except when drinking or competing. So when you got up to jump or throw, you took your mask off if you wanted. But when you sat down, most people were putting masks on most of the time. You had to put your mask on when you went through the mix zone as well. There was physical distancing everywhere. They had in the area where the jury sat, there were sleeves put over every other seat so that you weren't supposed to use them. And as you all know, there weren't any fans in the stands. But yes, once again, physical distancing, and Japan really did a good job at attempting to keep everybody safe. The athletes were required to hand sanitize before going to the mix zone, sorry, like I already said, and the athletes placed their own medals around their neck, as you saw on the TV during the medal presentations. This is just an overview of the stadium. As I say, we were right across the street from it. So it was quite a beautiful area. And I'm not sure any of you remember, but you heard this gentleman's voice on the TV. This is Michael Smith. When I was touring the stadium a day or two before the competition began, I ran into Michael at the stadium. So it was great to chat with him. His dad, Bert Smith, is still alive, and we had a chance to chat a couple of times during the competition. But he's a great gentleman. So, and sorry, John, I took my mask off once again, and as you see, we're not really physically distanced here, but we were outside. My job in Tokyo was, I'm an ITO, but I was secretary to the jury. So I unfortunately wasn't on the field of play daily, but I was involved daily with the competition. The secretary to the jury interfaces with the Technical Information Center. The Technical Information Center is where all the coaches and athletes go for any kind of information that they want. They submit their implements to be weighed in there. They get their receipts for the implements there. It's the place that if you want to place an appeal, you get the paperwork there. You submit your relay list there. I mean, it's the focal point of the meet. It's the communication center for team leaders, collection of information, paperwork. I interface with video. I collect evidence and any personnel that would support an appeal. So I alert any referee that might be consulted in any appeal. I coordinate the communication and convening of the jury, and I communicate the appeal and the decision to all the appropriate parties, whether it be the TDs, the press, the competition director, event presentation, whatever. I also accompany the chair to deliver the decision to the team. Sometimes it's good news, sometimes it's bad news, and I kind of have to intervene and call the meeting to a close when they want to debate some of the decisions. This is one of the juries in Tokyo. There are 2 ITOs on the jury which serve the whole time. In the upper right-hand corner is Helen from Australia. In the middle, the gentleman is John, he's from Ireland. Then bottom right is Abby Hoffman, who serves as the chair of the jury. She serves the whole time. And there are 2 council members who are on a rotationary basis. In the upper left here, we have the lady from Colombia. And this day, I can't remember who our other council member was. But once again, the 2 ITOs and the chair are constant throughout the whole, as well as myself, the secretary. And then the 2 council members, we have a rotation that they serve a couple of days throughout the competition. The appeals in Tokyo, we only had 19 in total, which was.
Excuse me a moment. I see in that previous picture, you have a microphone and what looks like a radio. What was that used for? And I see the others generally don't have that radio.
No, because I am the communication person with the competition director, who else was on that radio? Some of the referees are on that radio. No, so I'm kind of like the starter's assistant for the jury. So the starter's assistant is the one that kind of hears the race is ready to go, whatever. So this is what I do too, part of it. And the radio also goes to the technical information center. So I have contact with them as well, with the potential of an appeal that I might have to go down for. So the appeals in Tokyo, as I mentioned, we got away with only 19 in total. In Rio, there was 72. Now, Rio was the first major competition where a video referee was used. So a lot of the teams, I don't think were used to the number of disqualifications that might happen from a video referee. Where if somebody steps on the line, they steps on the line. Like you really can't question that, although they do. In the total of 19, I had 8 dealing with obstruction, predominantly in the distance races. There were 6 involving relay exchange zones, basically in the mixed 4x4, 2 dealing with lane violations. And then there were 3 miscellaneous ones. There was 1 on a lane draw, 1 on of a qualification, and 1 on an advancement. This is the jury once again. You see John, Helen, and Abby in the back row. They were our constants, myself in the front. At the very far right is Elio from Brazil. And hanging over the sort of railing just behind Helen, you see Raul, and he's from Spain. He was part of the rotation, but he just wasn't on duty that night. But you see, we're all sitting every other seat and apart. And sorry, we're not wearing our jackets because it was really hot in Japan the whole time we were there. It was wicked, to say this to the least, and as well as very, very humid. The exchange zone violations appeal, we had eight appeals transpire from round one in the mixed relay 4x4. The USA second runner, who happened to be a female, stepped onto the track outside the zone, and she was in front of the blue line, and she thought she was between the blue lines, but in actual fact, she was at the end of the zone, outside the zone. So officials tried to verbally tell her to back up and get in the zone. Either she didn't hear them, she didn't understand, I'm not sure. Anyways, the jury ruled in favor of reinstating the USA team on the grounds that in the rule book, it states the athlete was not placed correctly within the zone. There was a problem on the first night with the mixed relay. With a lack of officials in the exchange zone, I could hear the track referee over the radio saying, is there somebody to come down and help with the exchange zone? I need help at the exchange zone. And no one appeared. Following, if you watched or looked at the finish line area, whenever there was a 4x4 from that day on, there was an official per athlete. So they definitely remedied the situation, and we didn't have a problem like that again. So yes, it was quite an interesting situation. The call room in Tokyo, we had 2 call rooms were set up. Call room number 1 was a gathering tent between the warm-up area and the stadium. Basically, the athletes just checked in with a number and the event they were to be in. Call room 2, or the final call room, was under the back straight stands, large, huge area. You'll see in a few pictures here, air conditioned. So the athletes were quite comfortable in this area. There was an area where they could do some run throughs too if they wanted to, with Mondo surface. Huge area. There were numerous pods that were set up along the length of the area to allow for athletes to physically distance. And there were 2 large rooms off the call room area that were rest areas for the decathletes and the heptathletes. Each pod had a TV monitor and a multitude of sanitation supplies. Here you see they're just starting to set up the call room areas, but they had many different pods. You see the chairs are well set apart. They're nowhere near one another. There was no lack of space there. This it gives you a little bit of an idea just in the early setup. You can start seeing some sanitation supplies there. And this huge white area is actually a long jump, like the sand pit. So they wanted to make sure people didn't walk through that or trip in it. This end is the end that the athletes actually walked out on in to access the stadium from. This is the combined events rest area. They did bring in mats. They had hot meals served to them. They were treated royally. This is once again one of the pods, and you can see the TV monitor in the background. And now this is well set up and we're well underway. I believe this is one of the last days. And they had many different signs set up. They had a great system where they had the name of the pod or the name of the event outside the pod in a traffic cone. Then they would pick up that sign from the traffic cone and use it as the banner to lead the athletes out with. So it was a good use of equipment. Video distance measurement or VDM. It was used for the first time in Tokyo as the official measuring device for shot put. So I'm sure all of you as throws officials were looking or watching and couldn't figure out, like, there's nobody out in the sector because they don't need anybody in the sector because it's all done by video, which it allows for no judge marking in the sector. The only judge you see out there is somebody has to retrieve the implement and put it on the cart to be driven back to the circle. It has video distance measurement has been used for years with horizontal jumps, but it was used as a test in Doha, but it wasn't the official measurement. They were just testing it there. And so once again, Tokyo, it was the official measurement. It does require an extensive setup for throws. It's in Tokyo, it took about 3 hours prior to an event to get it all organized. So, and Daryl was asking me, I know what the discs were sort of beside the sector, and those were like in a horizontal jumps. Those are the measurement discs used for the VDM. This is the VDM room. In the upper right-hand corner, you see a man in a red shirt, and you see green just to his left. That would be the screen that they're using to sight for shot put. Omega happens to be the official carrier for the Olympics. So this is the VDM room. Here you get a little better view of the screen that they're looking at. And then they have a sort of a, not cheat notes, but it guidelines for video measurement. And I think we went up there to, the photo finish, chief photo finish judge wanted to check this out. So I was able to go up there with them. And this is their sort of Coles Notes version of what automatic video distance measurement and shot put is like. So I found that quite interesting. But it's also quite frustrating because the shot put lands, and when you're sitting up in the stands, you don't really know where the shot put landed. When there's an official there, you see them standing out there in between, the lines, so you can roughly gauge how far the throw was. But now you kind of have to wait for it to go up on the video boards to see how far it went. This is the video referee room. And there are 3 major screens that you see. On the far right, you can see it's divided into 4 for relay events. They can show all 4 exchanges at the same time if you really wanted to. On the left-hand screen was used mostly for track. The center screen was live, and the far right one was usually for field events. The gentleman you see on the far right in the white shirt with the headphones on, he was the field video referee, and the 2 gentlemen on the left were the track video referees. So as of after Doha, the video referee just had a too busy a time. And since then, we've implemented a track video referee and a field video referee, so that if you possibly think there was a foot fault in hammer or javelin or shot put, you can radio as a referee, you can radio up to the video referee right away and say, could you double check that one? We think that there was a foot fault on the front right corner of the circle. Could you review that for us? And then, of course, they can slow motion, they can do whatever they have to. And it's a great, quick confirmation of, is it a fault or isn't it a fault? Or if an athlete happened to do an oral protest, then you can double check very, very quickly, because we all know that if you're watching this live, you don't have the advantage of replay or let's look at that again. Just some observation that I made from Tokyo, that in spite of the smothering heat, there was no family, no friends or spectators in the stands. The athletes definitely came to compete. There were outstanding performances. There were 3 world records, Olympic records, too many to count. There were national, season, and personal bests in every heat and round. When the results went up on the video boards at either end of the stadium, beside every name, there were stars, meaning it was a national, season, personal best. Like almost every person had something beside their name. Athletes and teams banded together to support each other because they were all they had. It was really great to see the team section of the stadium full at all times. The athletes, like us as officials, were only allowed to be in the athletes' village or at the stadium. They did not have full access to any event they wanted to go to, as in other Olympics. Their athletes' dog tags would get them into swimming or team handball or basketball. Not this year. They were only allowed in whatever field of play was theirs. So they tended to spend, I mean, whether you have a chance to be in your room alone or at the stadium watching something live, more of them tended to be at the stadium supporting their teammates, which was really, really nice this year. Japan planned, they replanned, and they planned again for success. They were ready to go in 2020. And at the last minute, well, it wasn't the last minute, but we all know it was postponed. Then when it was postponed, they had to replan for COVID, and they did a magnificent job of keeping us safe. And we all know that World Athletics is trying to limit the number of people on the field of play. There are no limits to the number of Japanese judges. There were 240 Japanese judges at athletics. Now, they weren't all on the field at the same time, but there were a lot of officials. This gives you an idea. This was our last meeting before the last session. So everybody's in their formal attire. Competition director leads off the meeting with some words and thanks and whatever, but you get an idea of the number of officials that were there. This is in the call room area, one of the few areas that we could gather and be air conditioned. I mean, you must have some favorite moments. I definitely have some favorite moments. In the very first days of competition, the women's triple jump final was decided on the last jump. The woman broke the world record on the very last jump, which was outstanding. Men's high jump, I don't ever remember seeing a tie for first place. But this actually happened. I mean, it's in the rule book. We all know what the outcome can be. But here at the Olympics, there was actually a tie, a fantastic competition that night. And then ending with two gentlemen tying for the gold medal and then finding out that they don't have to jump off if they choose not to, and that two gold medals can actually be awarded. And these two gentlemen happen to be best friends as well. One stood up for the other one at his wedding, and it was an amazing evening. The 400-meter hurdle men, the world record was broken, not only by the Norwegian gentleman, but also by the athlete who came second. The women's 400-meter hurdles, same thing happened. The two ladies were dueling it out at the end. And I believe the men's 400-meter hurdle times were close to what a flat 400-meter hurdle would run. And that's just amazing when you're figuring they're going over 10 hurdles at the same time. Damian Warner was outstanding. He had personal bests, I think, in almost every one of his events, as well as Olympic best performances in each. He really, really competed well over the 2 full days in extreme heat, and definitely like warm conditions. The medical supervisor was down on the field a number of times, making sure that there was shade enough, especially for the decathletes and heptathletes who have to stay out there for extended period of time. This is the award, the medal ceremony for the men's high jump, because very rarely do you ever see two people on the top podium, but there they are. And this is the end of the men's 400-meter hurdles. This is Damian receiving his gold medal. And just to continue with a few favorite moments, Andre De Grasse was outstanding in his 200-meter final. He ran such a superb race. Not sure what happened to him in the 100-meter. He seemed to be stuck in the blocks and maybe didn't hear the gun. I'm not sure. Still came through with a bronze. And then the 4x100 relay, the boys just didn't give him the baton in time for him to make up that distance, but he ran a great leg. Allison Felix, can't believe this woman is 35 years old and medaled twice this year in the 400 and the 4x4. She is an amazing athlete and just a really quality person as well. Men's shot put, I'm sure we were all watching the throws, and it was fantastic to see Krauser and Kovacs dueling with 22-meter plus throws, almost every throw. The one little disappointment is Krauser didn't break the world record at the Olympics, but we've all seen him break it previous to that. The women's 100-meter final, 3 Jamaican women coming across the line, 1, 2, 3 was amazing. And who would think that an Italian would win the men's 100-meter final? It happened to be the same night as the men's high jump. And so Italy was in 7th heaven that night. Their team was gathered outside TIC singing and dancing. It was an amazing night for them. This is Andre for his 200-meter final. And the nice thing is Abby Hoffman got to present both Damian and Andre with with flowers. The Olympic Committee always hands out the medals, and then the event athletics, the World Athletics Council is able to decide who hands out the flowers. So Abby was very, very honored to hand out these two. And that's sort of a recap of, whoops, sorry. That's a recap of just a few of my memories. Want to thank you very much for allowing me to share some of my experiences. If you have any questions, I would, if possible, I wouldn't mind trying to answer them. But at this point in time, if you would like to unmute yourself, you are free to ask any questions if you have.
Jane,
Yes.
yeah, it's Daryl. In the men's shot, it looked to me like Walsh, the New Zealand guy, had initially all three of his throws were fouls, and then the second and third were reversed. Were you involved, or were you aware of what was going on, or what heard about it later, or anything?
Sorry, I wasn't involved. And that could be a case where he orally protested and they either couldn't get through to the video referee right that second, or it was reviewed and it was decided, or the field referee themselves went up, looked at the video and decided, no, that was good. So sorry, I can't answer that, but it was probably to do with video replay.
I figured it was something to do with that, because you could see him after, especially the second and third throws. He went over and spoke to who I think was the ITO, because he was not a Japanese fellow. He was a Caucasian man. And he just kind of shook his head and pointed. And then eventually the numbers went up for those throws. So, you know, I thought that must have been what happened. He verbally, you know, protested, and it was reversed, and he did in fact get his throws and came in third. So that was good to watch and see that happen.
Yes, the referees for 90% of the events are ITOs now. The combined events referee was not. It was a Japanese, it was an NTO. The referee of the call room usually is an NTO also, just because we don't have enough ITOs. We're only allowed 10 at a world championships or an Olympics.
Oh.
And we don't have enough to cover like every single event. So you're right, it was an ITO who was the referee, and he or she has a headset on that links directly to the video referee. And so you can get them like right away, which is great, because when I was in Rio, we could not get through to the video referee on our headsets. The transmission was terrible, and you kind of had to go after and check it out. You couldn't do it during the event, and really you need it during the event.
Good, thank you.
No problem. Any other questions or anything somebody wants to share?
I should note that I think it was Damian Warner's long jump would have been good for a medal in the specialist event.
Yes, I think you're very correct at that. Yes.
Yeah. But my actual question is about the 240 Japanese judges. So now they have an excellent cadre of people who have Olympic experience and can go on to work high-level events anywhere in the solar system. And I think that's the main legacy of having a really big event, the event organizing smarts in the whole city and the event operation smarts of a crew of officials who work the big event and then know how to bring big event class to any other event.
Right. Yes, that's definitely an advantage.
Jane,
Yes, John.
how did they keep 240 people occupied during the Olympics?
Well, in some countries, the rakers, like in Canada, our rakers are usually volunteers, right, at horizontal jumps, or people who are the retrievers or the end of the tape. They're volunteers, they're not officials. So I believe the officials did everything there, with the exception of setting up the hurdles. Those were volunteers.
Okay. Because there weren't 240 people involved in the selection trials in Montreal, that's for sure.
No. No, we all know that we get along. I mean, you can run a meet with a skeleton crew, but and then when it comes to an Olympics or World Championship, everybody wants to be involved. So, like I said, 240 people weren't out on the field at a time, but it allowed some rest time, which as throws officials in Canada, we don't know how to pronounce the word rest, let alone, take a rest. So they didn't work 18-hour days.
Uh-huh. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. If there aren't any other questions or comments, we would possibly meet again in maybe not February, but March. Does that sound okay for everybody? And I believe we've gone on a Tuesday night in the past. And I was just going to flip my calendar open to March to see if we possibly went March 15th, if everybody penciled that in on their calendar, then we would like to, during that time, I think it's a time for, rather than Daryl and I to set the agenda, for you to submit questions, scenarios. Is there something you would like us to cover? And this doesn't have to be answered right this minute.
But if you
Daryl.
have any questions, just send them to the Throws Event Leader website or the Throws Event Leader address, and then I can forward them on to Jane, and the two of us can figure out what we're going to tell you as the answer. So if you have any questions or conditions that you want to explore further, just send them to us in advance so that we can prepare the answers properly. That's good with you, Jane?
That's fantastic, Daryl.
March 15th, you say, right?
I
Yep.
said March 15th, if that's, I'm going to mark it down here even in ink. And I'll put, for me, it's 6 p.m., but we'll go 7 p.m. Eastern time. And hopefully by then, maybe things have opened up a bit, but we'll see. But
Sounds
I'd like to thank you all for joining us this evening, and have a good winter. And I hope the sun shines on you like it's doing in Windsor.
good.
Lovely day today.
Thanks, Jane.
Thanks,
That was
Jane.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you.